Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of P.O.D TV, formerly IBM TV, and I'm the host of World Edition. And on World Edition, we bring you great news from around the world and talk about sustainable innovations and what we can do to build back better during this pandemic. Today, I want to take a moment and take a break from global politics and begin my monologue with the legendary Coach Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K. Today, he is announcing at 11:30 at Cameron Indoor Stadium, formally his retirement from being the Duke University head basketball coach. It is an amazing, amazing achievement for this coach in his 42 years at Duke University. He has led a team to 12 Final Four appearances, 15 ACC championships, 1,170 wins, making him the winningest coach in college history. And he won, get this, five national championships. Although I'm a Carolina fan because I have a daughter now that's a Tar Heel, and I also have many friends at NC State, I can tell you that I have always been inspired by Coach K. In addition to being a great coach, he is a great leader. He has worked tirelessly to help raise money for St. Jude's Hospital, for cancer organizations. He serves on the Jimmy V board. He leads the CEO Forum on cancer research. But many of you around the world are probably wondering, why do you make such a big deal about basketball in the United States, particularly North Carolina? Well, I have to tell you as I close out this monologue, I think Coach K has a lot more to do than just basketball. He has everything to do about what true leadership is about. You see, in the middle of a pandemic and racial division and all of the short-sighted kind of political situations that we come up with in America, when we see Coach K, we see someone who's able to bring out the best in each other. He reminds us of what we really can achieve if we all come together with the common goal, to be our very best. That's what championships are. Championships are won when we bring out the best in each other. And I can say that in his 42 years at Duke, there's never been a day when Coach K hasn't given his best for his team. But there's never been a day when he hasn't believed in the greatness of his players. He becomes one of them. That's true leadership. And we need more leaders like Coach K. I hope and pray that he will continue to stay in this region, in North Carolina, but more importantly, that we will always remember what his legacy stands for. We must keep fighting for the excellent principles which he has led here in North Carolina and college basketball and coaching an Olympic championship team for the Olympics for basketball. I could go on, but Coach K, we are going to miss you. But we will never, ever forget you. And we will never let your legacy of leadership die, ever. In North Carolina and the United States, and here on World Edition, we make you the man of the hour, the man of the week, and maybe even the man of the year. Thank you, Coach K. I'm now going to bring in my colleagues, Mark Lee, my co-host, Sasha Starr, and others who are going to join. A little bit off the top, but I had to change it up.
No problem. I was actually going to add to that because you forgot to mention his role in the Olympics, because he was actually also an Olympic coach and did a great job of that. And, one of the things you talk about is economic development. And, one of the pride and joys of Durham is a place called West Village. And Grant Hill, one of his former players, was actually very much involved in that and everything, along with some other Duke players as well. As a matter of fact, I believe it was 2 or 3 Duke players and a real estate person that were the ones that were the primary partners behind that was part of the renovations and kind of the renaissance of what's going on here in Durham. So, they were the pioneers in that field and all of that. And of course, he's got the Emily K Center which is definitely part of their legacy as well. That does a lot of work with our youth and all of that. So definitely there is a person that is going to be missed. My dad taught at Carolina, did some teaching briefly, if I remember correctly, at Duke. I'll need to double check with him on that. I know he did some seminars over there, but he's definitely somebody that I've known for a while. My cousin went to Duke. I'm not a Duke fan. I definitely in the past have rooted for Carolina. And of course, I also rooted for my alma mater, Marquette. But, our last coach before Shaka Smart was part of the coaching tree because, any great coach also produces a great coaching tree. And he has definitely done that with coaches like Tommy Amaker, Quinn Snyder, who's actually in the NBA coaching in a series right now and everything, and a number of others. So, great leaders in any field try to make sure that they have, for lack of a better term, disciples that go and do as great, if not better work. And it is my understanding that they will be announcing John Shire, one of his disciples, as the next coach. So definitely, like I said, it's a long legacy and one that is very much honored here in Durham, North Carolina. And I was actually somewhat shocked, even though, people retire eventually anyway. But when I saw that come across my news feed yesterday, it definitely caught me a little bit off guard because I was thinking he was going to coach for another 5-10 years and all of that. I thought he was going to be, well, I'm not sure. Him and Sasha may be close in age and everything, but I was thinking he was going to coach until he was well into his 80s or 90s. Maybe I was just being unrealistic and all of that, but definitely a true legacy and a true person of power and all of that. But that's my thoughts on it. I don't know if Sasha's got any international perspective and all of that, but I know you have some things that you want to talk about. And I've got to bring up an issue later that is a topic dear to the heart of Mr. Sasha Starr. And that's something about race theory and some of the other things that have gone on, including what's the term, canceling culture, which I know is more of a to kill issue. But I saw that we had something like that more from the right than from the left here in North Carolina. And I'll explain that in a little bit, but it involves a major corporation. But we'll see what folks have to say about that.
Thank you, Mark. I'm not going to waste anybody's time on this subject, and let's move on to the next one. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, yeah, and I just want to throw that out there with Coach K. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't begin my monologue with him, but I think I get that question all the time. Why do we make such a big deal about basketball? But I think in general, athletics means more than just what you see in that instance. It's really about bringing people together and working together for a common goal. And, I think we need more of that in the United States. So hopefully, he could set a good example for that. And we wish him all the best. And for those of you, 11:30, if you're in North Carolina, it's on 11:30 on WRL, his talk. So let's get into I guess we'll start with Sasha Starr just in terms of some of the hot topics today. I know that looks like Netanyahu is facing his last few hours in office, most likely in Israel. That's interesting development. Things changing fast over there. And anything else, Sasha, that you want to start with today as we have our roundtable?
I think I made my comments loud and clear yesterday. He is extraordinary man, but his time probably has passed, has to move on. And the fact the new coalition probably will take place and will govern from now on.
Mark, what are your thoughts about Israel?
Well, like I said, I'm not surprised. A lot of times new leadership does come in. I've seen that a number of times in my life here in Israel, and it'll be interesting to see whether it becomes a more moderate type of politics or whether it stays in that realm of hardline and all of that. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out on the whole issue of Palestine and a number of other things as well. But I'm very curious to see what the new impact is of this new government. But definitely it's a very interesting region, one that I hope to visit at some point or another. I haven't had that pleasure yet of going to either Israel or Egypt or a number of other places in the Middle East that I would like to visit. So hopefully that'll change as we get out of this pandemic and I'm able to hopefully do some more travel, because as I've stated on a number of shows, that's something that I've not done nearly enough of in my lifetime.
Yes. The other hot issue that, and we've talked about it before, but it just keeps resurfacing, is cyber warfare. So now JBS is back up and running, but a lot of talk about how just in the last couple of weeks we have had, our colonial pipeline, we've had healthcare systems, major corporations attack, cyber warfare, and now our meat. What's next? And why is this happening in Canada? Is this happening in other parts of the world, or is it being more sensationalized in the United States? But Sasha, what are your thoughts about from your international perspective about cybersecurity?
From a Canadian perspective, is of course there is danger of whatever happened in US. However, Canada, because it's much smaller country, not in territory, but population, economy, it's not. For example, if you spend some amount of money and hours to inflict some damage to the United States, you will get much more bang for your money than you'll do whatever is the same thing in Canada. So Canada is not interesting target, at least compared to US. So everything will be concentrated on US. There will be many more attacks, more significant attacks. I expect that essentially the usual way of life will be disrupted, unless America will do something about something very significant. I think there is a net in the air for some reason.
I think that's a good point. I think it's something that has to be taken very seriously. And I think that there's a tendency to say, well, it could happen, it may happen. You heard an incident, well, maybe it won't happen. I think you have to make assumptions that it is going to happen and that every day we are vulnerable to an attack. And, the simplest things like training on the kinds of emails to open, having adequate training, having your network assessed. It takes just a matter of seconds for these things to infiltrate and destroy a network. And without data, we're paralyzed, right? I mean, our city was shut down for 10 days when we were hit by a ransomware attack. And, what's happening is that, with the value of cryptocurrency, I know it's been sort of in the air right now. It's scary, right? I mean, so hopefully we can come to a resolution about this, right, Mark?
Basically, the situation. Sorry, I just want to make a statement simply because all of these attacks are coming from Russia. It reminds me an old stories about how the gangsters are operating. For example, or at least in Russia in the 90s, it was very popular film where some guys from a criminal gang, they would come to a store and ask, well, look, are you safe? Nobody bothers you? Everything is all right because we can provide protection that nothing really happened to. The owner says, no, I don't need protection. Nothing happens to me. Okay, so the next day, his store is burned. They're coming 2 days later, say, so do you need really a protection? It looks like somebody burned your store. Oh, yes, of course we need protection because there are a lot of evil people and they burned my store. Could you help me? Yeah, sure, we will help you. You will pay us, say, $10,000 a month and your store will keep operating and nothing will happen from that point on. So the same thing, if all these attacks are from Russia, so Mr. Biden could tell Mr. Putin and say, look, listen, I know that you're not involved and your government agencies are not involved, but the fact remains that all these attacks originating in Russia. So instead of us paying for better defense or pay ransom money, which happens, as we know, we will pay you. Say, what do you need? Say, $10 billion a month, right? And you will be able to stop all these attacks once and for all, keep all these people at bay, and from that point on, we will get. Well, maybe that's an option to look at.
Interesting idea and everything. One of the things I was going to mention really quickly is that it definitely is impacting us on a lot of levels, because I actually noticed that I got a letter from Dominion Energy yesterday, and that's part of what they were doing, was letting me know that they were, testing the grounds on a regular basis and doing things of that nature. And I don't even remember getting a letter from them here in my apartment complex until recently. So I'm sure that that was a response to the entire attack, and just letting us know that they were on top of it and that they were trying to do whatever they could to stay on top of it. So, like I said, I just happened to see that in my mailbox yesterday, and like I said, it was just telling me about if I saw suspicious activities or things of that nature, to be sure to do the due diligence and report it, and also let them know what was going on in that regard. And like I said, I've been here now for a few years at this particular complex, and I don't remember it ever coming up before in a letter, but it looked like they were sending them to all the residents around the apartments, and even those that are homeowners as well. So definitely it sounds like they are just one of those agencies that is trying to stay on top of this and everything else. I did have a quick question for Sasha, and that's that I've been on a couple of international style rooms that are in those kind of like social media space and all of that. And they were talking about the fact, because I've met a couple of people from your home country of Canada, and they were talking about the fact that definitely y'all are still in a tighter lockdown than we are, and definitely it seems like it's going to be there going for a while. So as you've been watching America open up, and there was even some conversation here in the United States and everything about trying to get more people unified in the way that we're opening up, because there might be a different style of opening up in say Colorado or Montana, which might have tighter restrictions than it is in either North Carolina or New York. But I was just wondering your thoughts about how your government is handling this, and are you glad that they are slow rolling it, to use that expression, or are you wishing that they would be a little more quicker the way that the United States has been?
Well, probably I'm the wrong person to ask, because my lifestyle doesn't change with what the government of Ontario is going to do or not going to do. To tell you the truth, if everything would be reopened in next hour and a half, I would still do the same thing. That wouldn't affect me at all. However, I believe that they're doing credible job. At least what, they're really good at explaining what they're doing. I don't think that they're 100% right, not at all. But because it's the longest closeout probably in the world, what we have here in Ontario, the cases dropped down substantially. It's now less than 1,000 a day, but it still persists. The mortality rates are way, way down, which is very good news. So now he is talking. I think yesterday he talked about actually closing a little bit faster than he proposed before. So I'm waiting only for one thing to open, is a hairdresser. Because last summer, I had to pay $200 for a haircut, so I don't want to do it this year. So maybe they will open up in next 2-3 weeks, and we'll carry on from that point on.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the other thing, real quickly to talk about, Mark. I think it's interesting to see. The echo's not coming from my computer, I don't think, is it?
Yes, it
There is
is.
no echo now.
Interesting.
I don't hear echo.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
No, the echo's not as bad as it used to be. So just keep on going.
Yeah, I don't know, because normally when I use the headsets, there's no echo, so I put my headsets on. I think it's interesting to see the fact that we are really, really getting close to having a significant number of Americans vaccinated. I think we've reached a plateau, though, where we're noticing even in North Carolina that now there's oversupplies of vaccines and people are just throwing it away. So I hope that we can give the excess vaccines to other countries so that we can get them vaccinated. And I don't know what's going on in Canada, whether there is just kind of the people who don't want to get. I mean, are there people in Canada who don't want to get vaccinated, Sasha?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Very, very few, but there are. They were trying to make some demonstrations and public appearances and so on, but they were very quickly were neutralized. Okay, let's put it this way. And essentially, what the Premier of Ontario, he made it clear that there is a correlation between number of vaccinated people and the early opening. So essentially, he motivates people who are already vaccinated to motivate people who are not vaccinated, some relative friends or so on, to actually get vaccine. That's very smart strategy as well, in my opinion. And you see, it's probably it's the wrong time to talk about your entitlements and freedoms and so on, because essentially what you're doing, it doesn't affect just you alone. It affects other people. And in that situation, if from your decision other people could suffer as per late opening, or that they can probably get coronavirus from you, who knows? Maybe unlikely, but possibility exists. So if I have a friend and I would like to invite him over, and I know that I'm vaccinated and he's not, you know what? I may not elect seeing this friend since he's not vaccinated, and I just don't want to impose myself and my family on risk whether I will get coronavirus from here or not. Why do I need that? So I will not invite him and I will not see him until I'll find out that he is vaccinated, and I will not look for excuses how to explain that. I will explain it right into his face or her face, whatever.
Makes sense. Hey, Nick, glad that you popped in, and God knows that Steve has got all kinds of questions for all of us. But I was just going to let you know that I was actually thinking about you yesterday during the online dinner party, because my initial guest and one that stayed the longest was a young lady that has created a cartoon character called Chloe the Jumbo Jet. So she's trying to encourage kids to do your favorite activity, which is travel. So she's created a cartoon character and all of that, which is encouraging our young folks to travel. So as I was interviewing her, I was like thinking, hey, Nick needs to be here because he's a world traveler and all of that. But she's trying to encourage folks to do that on a regular basis. And she was one of about 4 or 5 guests, including our great friend here, Steve.
Yeah, yeah, and Steve is very magnanimous. He goes, why don't we just give these people our coronavirus vaccine? But here's the problem, Steve. And we'll go to Japan. I'm going to beat up Japan for today. We don't get many listeners from Japan, so frankly, I don't care about the Japanese because they don't listen to us anyway. They only listen to Japanese stuff, and we don't speak Japanese. But here's the problem. So Japan's sponsoring the Olympics, right? Yep. And they did not get their population vaccinated. Why? As Sasha would know, follow the money, dude. Follow the money. They didn't want to pay Pfizer. They didn't want to pay Moderna. They didn't want to pay anybody because Japan was too cheap to put out the money for their people to get vaccinated. That's the real reason that no one's brought up. Okay, why aren't the Japanese vaccinated? Because the other problem is their debt ratio is like the highest in the world, their debt to GDP ratio. So they're sitting there with this huge pile of debt on the government. The last thing they want to do is spend more government money to go out and pay Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, J&J, whoever. So what they did is they didn't get their people vaccinated. Now along comes the Olympics. Oh, big problem because it brings coronavirus to their doors, and they didn't do it. But a lot of countries didn't do it because they're too bloody cheap. Now, the solution is, why don't we just give them the vaccine? What do you mean give them the vaccine? Who's going to pay for it? You know, they don't want to pay for it. Why should we pay for Japanese to be vaccinated? Mark, do you want to pay to have the Japanese vaccinated? Huh?
No,
you're going to write a check?
A whole lot of money, and I don't, I've got my own financial problems, so I think I'll pass.
Right. So the last thing in the world, we don't want to do it. So the thing is, they need to figure this one out. Japan, and same with some of these other countries. And they're not talking about that in major media, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that that's exactly what happened. And the reason the Americans are being vaccinated, our government went out, we spent the money to buy the vaccines from Pfizer, Moderna, or whoever, to get our people vaccinated. We're willing to do that. And some of these other countries weren't because they're too bloody cheap. And that's too bad for them.
Hey, Nick and Steve,
That's the reality.
this is a question for both of you because I've been reading about this whole concept and everything. You know, as we have been having vaccinations and all of that, and more people are getting vaccinated. I think we're above 60%, maybe even pushing near that 70% mark that I think is the goal for
In North Carolina, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And my question, though, is there have been some talks about incentive programs to actually pay people to get vaccinated and everything. What is our panel's thoughts about that? That, you know, folks might have actually been sitting there waiting to get the money versus going to get the vaccination right now because, you know, they've heard about these programs and they're like,
there have been.
hey, I'm going to wait to get paid.
There have been some incentives. I know the North Carolina Department of Human Services here in our home state has been offering summer vaccine cash cards where you get some incentives in cash. A lot of music festivals and things like that, providing food in Raleigh at Empire Eats, where they're doing vaccination clinics at restaurants. You get the free food. So this is a big push to get folks vaccinated because, you know, where we live, only 49.1% of our population is vaccinated. That's, you know, so but that's actually less than what's going on in the U.S., where President Biden is really working hard to get 70%. So I don't think there's a problem with it. A little bit weird, as long as it's not my tax money that's going to get people vaccinated. If someone wants to donate food or give their own cash. The second thing I'll say is that there was a ruling recently, and I don't know whether this would be interesting to see what's going on in Canada, but that employers could mandate vaccination.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
That was actually a Supreme Court of the United States decision in 1908. Believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
That they or governments can mandate people to have vaccines because we realized that years ago these vaccines could kill people, and that's when life was considered valuable. Okay, that they really don't want people getting killed in 1908. Now fast forward it to 2020. We don't care if 500,000 people died. It was like, okay, so what? You know, so what they did, and the other reason they mandated it is this: when people got polio, for the people that can remember back then, and I had friends that had that, you know, it was a lifelong debilitation disease. And you know, I still have friends today. Their arms are like this. Their legs are stripped with polio. And so what happened was when somebody gave you a polio vaccine, you realize I can either take it or I'm crippled for life. In other words, those were your choices. When smallpox was the same thing. In other words, when they're pulling out the body bags of smallpox, people go, here's your choice, take the vaccine or dead. Today, we have such a denial because, unfortunately, a lot of these people that died of COVID-19 were hidden in our hospitals. What we should have done is taken the bodies out and dumped them on the streets so people could see it, you know, instead of hiding them in the hospitals and let people die with dignity. We shouldn't have done that. That was not a great service. Having body bags lined up in the streets would have given people more of an impression that this is real than what we did, and that's something that's just very unfortunate. And we treat death a lot like that.
I remember watching one program. I think it was at CNN probably, and it was in the United States. And so the guy, I don't remember exactly where, but he was saying that he doesn't care about this coronavirus. He's not gonna get a mask or keep the distance. He doesn't care. It's all kind of hoax and so on. And then he got actually infected, and he was lying in a hospital, still saying the same thing. I don't care. It's not real. It's just a flu, and so on. So the doctor took him in a ward where they had people on the ventilators dying. And he told him, in a few days, you are going to be here, and from here, you'll die, and we'll have funeral or so on. That affected him so much. He started to scream, I don't want to die. Please help me. I will wear a mask. I will take any pills, whatever you recommend. I don't want to die. So all of a sudden, it's no longer the hoax. It's no longer that he doesn't care about something. Oh, he cares. I hope he survived. I don't know really what happened to him.
Yeah.
And about incentives, I've heard yesterday, as a matter of fact, there is a stock AMC, the movie theater operator.
Right.
Their stock went up 100% yesterday. And one of the things what they announced, that people who are going to attend and who will buy the stock, they will be given free popcorn in their next movie going. So incentives work. And probably now it's time to get engaged at jewelry stores, because if they will participate in argument for taking vaccine, I think people will line up to have a vaccines.
Yes. I agree. I mean, I think it's just a matter, because sooner or later, you're just going to have people that aren't going to want to get vaccinated. They're just not going to change their mind. And, I think we need to get back to, I'd like to see a return back to in-person events just from business perspective. But I know Sasha is a real fan of, he wants more business meetings on Zoom. I will agree with Sasha Starr that I do believe that I've been able to have more productive business meetings now with these virtual technologies, so that when I do meet somebody, I've done more prep work. So it's a more efficient use of the time, right? Rather than having a first meeting so if you have a meeting and you do the research and you focus in, whatever it is, whether it's a sales transaction, a business transaction, when you meet that person, it's more meaningful. And so for me, like, I'm spending my mornings, doing all of this stuff and doing this, and then afternoon getting outside and meeting people. So splitting my day where you're getting more done. So actually,
in my understanding, a lot of sales meetings are about closing the sale. Let's say one company sells something and another company wants to buy that stuff. You can negotiate all the way on Zoom and agree on some kind of a price, delivery dates, and everything else. However, if it's a face-to-face meeting, then you can say that, okay, our company will buy so much from your company, and I want a kickback of 5% to my personal account. You cannot do it over Zoom. That's a problem, because everything is recorded, everybody is listening, so you can't do that. So if you're flying there, your trip will cost company, say, $10,000. Not a big deal. Then over there, in a private meeting, you can negotiate a huge kickback for yourself or so on. That's why people are fighting to keep personal meetings, to arrange all these corrupted things. There is no other reason for that.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just, so what else? Let's talk about, I like this idea of talking about controversy on this show. And so I think a good thing to talk about is this whole notion of critical race theory. Okay. So Sasha, what's going on today in the US is that, you have the Republicans in this state who are saying that we can't talk about race in the classrooms, that they don't want people knowing that we're a racist country or things like that. And that's the real debate is, what is critical race theory, which I don't think is really understood. Should it be taught in schools, right? And if not, how do we deal with the fact that these things are something that we need to take care of? Right?
But please explain what exactly is a critical race
Mark,
theory.
I'm going to let you start on what it is. But I think critical race theory is that race affects our views and perspectives. What our race is, it shapes policy, right?
Yep.
Is that what it's about?
I think that that's a good definition, and I was actually going to give the full definition according to our friends at Google and all of that. But the way I understand critical race theory is that you can actually use race to discuss important issues that are going on in society, whether that's the prison industrial complex or whether that's from a historical standpoint. Those issues are like slavery, like the civil rights movement, and a number of other things that you can actually use critical race theory to talk about. Louis Farrakhan, and I know that's a controversial figure, but you can use it to talk about him and the American Muslims. You can also use it to talk about the Black Panthers and a number of other things that are things that have happened in our history. So definitely, some people would say 1619 Project was an example of critical race theory and its use and all of that. And, we're even dealing with that here because, there's the whole fight, and it looks like she may be suing UNC because she did not get tenure with the lady that did the 1619 Project and all of that. So definitely, that's my idea of what critical race theory is that it's able to use race to discuss what's going on in the world and all of that. So that's my idea of what it means. But I'm going to find the full definition, and y'all can tell me whether you agree or not. But one of the other things that I was going to add to that is that there was actually an example, and I know Shaquille oftentimes talks about, has the right ever canceled folks or canceled culture? And I was reading a story this morning that seems to imply that it was going on in a small county here in North Carolina, and that's Surrey County. But apparently, Coca-Cola had come out and they were not too happy with some of the voting rules that were going down there in Georgia, and they are based in Georgia. So they made that statement in a press release. And so the fine folks in Surrey County have decided that they are going to eliminate all Coke machines from their offices there in that particular county. So, I don't know that they can take them out of schools or take them out of any of the other places, but if it's a actual county building, it looks like those folks in Surrey County are saying no to Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola said yes to fighting against the racist voting rules that were going on there in Georgia. So I felt that was an example of there being some cancel culture from the right side versus the left side, because they said they're going like, we don't like what they said, therefore we're going to remove you.
Right. That's it, Sasha.
No. You haven't explained anything at all. As I didn't understand anything about it before, you explained it's the same thing now.
Well,
wait a sec. First of all, is what is it? Critical race theory and cancel culture. Are these two coming together and we have to discuss them together, or there are two different disciplines?
They are often put together and everything. Basically, what critical race theory says is that most of the laws and institutions here in the United States have some racist past. And therefore, you're going to discuss that as they will relate to social, economic, and political inequalities that exist between both the European society and those that are non-European, which of course would include African Americans, Asians, Hispanics, and a number of others. So basically, it is putting the United States in context. So you're putting it in context of its history. That is what critical race theory is. And that's not even me looking at the definition. That's more like a more concrete
Mark, help me to understand how you can call something a theory, which all what they're saying, from what I understood listening to you, that there are races, which we all agree, there are races, there were races, there will be races, okay? Fine. So now they're saying is that the races define something, which I'm not unclear what exactly they do define, but the races, it's nobody is arguing about the fact.
No, it's not about whether there's racist or not. I guess the question is there under critical race theory, if critical race theory is a true theory and it's something that people can buy into, institutional racism is real. And that is what the real article is.
How do you define
institutional racism? Hold on a second, Sasha. Institutional racism basically says that because of the racist past, that has impacted what is going on in the present. So that's basically what critical race theory says, that what has happened in the past, meaning that slavery, the civil rights struggle, all of that impacts the divide that exists now. So it's really being used to explain why there is a class divide, and the class divide is oftentimes along racial lines. So that's where critical race theory is. You are one that is in that finance world. So definitely, if you look at the finance world, there is definitely a class divide. And a lot of the class divide is across racial lines. And that's what critical race theory tries to explain.
Mark, but the same thing, critical race theory, it could be critical economic theory, which would easily prove that children who were born in privileged neighborhoods and going to the right schools and then getting diplomas from Harvard, they are having unfair advantage of people from the poor neighborhood who wouldn't go to Harvard or any other university or so on. So what exactly does it prove? Like, what's the use of that? It's the same thing like if you will try to convince me that it's better to be I don't know, healthy and wealthy than sick and poor. And I will tell you, of course I agree with that. Of course it's better to be healthy and wealthy than sick and poor. So this theory, okay, let's come back a little bit. There are three cornerstone social theories in our civilization. Number one is the liberal theory. Number two is a Marxist theory. And number three is fascist theory. Now, the fascist theory was defeated in 1945. The Marxism was defeated in 1991 with dissolution of the Soviet Union, the only country which was actually able to build a socialism, but that was all destroyed in 1991. So that leaves us, for now, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, for now, a liberal theory, and there is nothing else that can come even close to the main teachings of the liberal theory. Now, the critical race theory, the way you explain it, there is no theory whatsoever. There's statements saying that the previous race story of people defines what they're doing now. And it could be so, but the same you can tell about the economic inequalities, that people who were, as I said, were born in privileged families or so on, they will go much farther ahead in life and will do much better than people from underprivileged communities. So basically, the theory, it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't help anybody to do anything. It just states the probably most obvious facts, which I would agree with them. So what means that a theory? It's not a theory. It's a bunch of statements that you can agree or disagree, and there is no mileage out of
But
it.
from a sociological standpoint, that's what a theory is, because feminism is basically a theory. Would you agree that the feminist theory exists and that there is a difference between the way that we treat women and men? So that's what the feminist theory is. So critical race theory would be the same as the feminist theory or a number of other theories that exist out there. Theories are basically a series of statements that you either agree with or you don't agree with from the sociological standpoint. So, I mean, there are a number of theories out there. There are theories about the Asian population and everything. So, like I said, that to me is what a theory is. There are a series of the statements that you can either agree with or disagree with. I mean, that's the whole concept.
Okay, the feminism is a different story because at least roughly 50% of the population in the world are females. But
and roughly 50% of and more than 50% of the population is minority.
Probably.
If you want to go by the race theory.
Probably, but there is a twist. For example, what's accepted as a norm in North America is frowned upon in Europe, for example. In Europe, women expect that a gentleman will open a door for her. He will open the door in the car where she sits and close the door once she's already sitting. There is etiquette of paying for her, let's see, if you're going out. So a gentleman is expected to pay for a meal or so on. All that would be a horrible thing in North America because that's a chauvinism. How dare you are? Do you think I don't have money to pay for my meal? How dare you are to open the door for me? Do you think I cannot do it myself or so on? And also the feminism is something that yeah, you're right. Essentially, you can agree with it or disagree. In fact, the feminists are doing a huge disservice to themselves because essentially they're denying that men have to support women, which happened in the last 100,000 years. So now they're saying we don't want to be supported anymore. Okay, for example, in chess, women are playing, they're less strong than men. Let's put it very nicely. They're just not playing game as well as men. For various reasons. I don't want to go into that now, but it's just accepted fact. So what chess organization created long time ago, they have separate tournaments for men and for women. So women have opportunity to fight for certain prizes. They have cash prizes and so on. So the best of them can win cash prizes, and nothing wrong with that. So the feminists are saying, no, 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 we are equal to men. We should play on chess on equal to men. Of course you can play on equal with men, but guess what? You will never win any prizes unless you are Judith Polgar. Judith Polgar was only one female in all history of chess who was fighting on equal. She was, at her prime, she was number 8 player in the world among men. That's how good she was. But this is a phenomenal situation. As an average, men are stronger. And if women will not have their women-only tournaments, they will not have any cash prizes left for them. That's the reality. So,
and you look at
welcome to feminist world.
But you look at equal pay for equal work, right? I mean, so you look at, for example, today in the U.S. Open, we talked about Osaka yesterday. By the way, I've got to leave in 5 minutes, but I've reached out to the former president of the United States Tennis Association, Katrina Adams, who hopefully can join us either this week or next to talk about the perspective from just American tennis, right? But Billie Jean King devoted much of her career to getting equal pay. And so today in the U.S. Open, they get a $1 million check, the same, a woman versus a man. Although there's always this debate, if you took the strongest man player against the strongest woman, would it even be close, right? Because
there is another problem. There is another problem. Men are playing 5 sets in a Grand Slam.
Yes.
Women play only 3 sets. Why the hell they're playing 3 sets? They should get paid the same as men who play 5 sets. So men, their matches are much longer. Television shows them way much more than women. So only because women have a nice look and good legs, so they should be paid equally as men? You tell me.
No, first off, you're talking about equal pay. We're talking about equal pay for the same kind of work. Should a female firefighter get paid less than a male firefighter? And there have been studies that have said that that is actually happening and everything. If they're doing the same job and they're doing the same work, the same for police officers, the same for doctors, the same for teachers. If we look at jobs that is the same job that you're doing, and we're not talking about tennis. I get the sports analogy, but we're not talking about tennis where, yes, there is a difference between the amount of sets that are played and everything. But part of that was because of the rules that were established. I would dare to bet that probably some of those rules were established by the man, and they were probably established by almost 100 or 150 years ago, because that's been going on for some time and everything. So that's another thing in terms of the difference between them and everything. So yes, while the game may be shorter and all of that, and even let's look at the TV. Who's in charge of the TV stations is predominantly European men. So definitely they would definitely be concentrating more on the games that exist within their own crowd or subset and things of that nature. So definitely I think that there should be equal pay, particularly if you're doing the same job. And if we look at the divide that exists in pay, it's oftentimes on the same job. Should a female construction worker get paid less than a male construction worker if they're doing the same job?
You said exactly the same job. So if women would play 5-set matches, that would in fact provide the same job. So now they're saying, hey, we play 5-setters and men are playing 5-setters. You want the same money? No, that's not what they're saying.
That's an interesting concept, I know.
They're saying, no, we're going to play 3 sets, but pay just as much as men who play 5 sets. So the men are slaves and the men are working extra hard hard to get the best, the same money as women. Is that fair? Maybe, but I don't think so.
Well, I'm going to close out early. I'm sorry, guys. I've had some work commitments this week, but I'll be here for the whole hour tomorrow. A couple of things. Tomorrow, when I begin my monologue, we're going to be talking about some breaking news on the immigration front in the United States with the bill that's on the floor of the House called the Eagle Act. And it's basically accelerating the path to skill-based immigration. I've reached out to Jeremy Robbins from New American Economy, possibly who could come next week, which is a board that's organized by Mike Bloomberg, former New York City mayor, about immigration. Many Indians and Vietnamese and Philippine and Chinese Americans are affected by the green card backlog. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that tomorrow. A couple of other things to talk about before I leave. We talked about Israel. We've talked about vaccination. I think the other thing I want to start seeing is talking about foreign policies. You know, Myanmar. There's a congressman in I can't remember his name. He wants to have a Myanmar coup in the U.S., right?
Yeah, he wants basically Donald Trump to come back into office.
Yeah. President Trump is visiting North Carolina on Saturday in Greenville. And what does this mean? I'll end my closing thoughts with this. And I think this is very interesting. I think this will make Sasha Starr happy. But I've been speaking to moderate Republicans. One of them was a former mayor that I served with as his deputy mayor for 4 years. And when you say the name Donald Trump, their reaction is, oh, God, I wish he would step down. Because they believe that he's galvanizing the base, but he's hurting the long-term interests of the party in terms of winning a general election. So it may be a good thing that Trump's not going away for Democrats and moderate Democrats, because he's going to, those moderate Republicans may either not vote, or they may vote for Joe Biden, right? Or they may vote for Democratic congressmen or senators, right? So this party of extremism, I think, has affected the future of the party, Republican Party, right?
Steve, I think that if Biden and Democrats really wanted to, they could already by now indict Donald Trump and already make his name really for what it is. So it would be a despicable kind of a situation. However, I think they are on purpose trying to prolong all this process. So the Republicans, otherwise, they would have to replace him with some other figure, Ted Cruz, maybe somebody else, because the party needs a leader, right? But right now, Mr. Trump hasn't been indicted yet, so he could be still a leader for the next several months. And that's exactly what I think Democrats want. They want him to remain a leader, because with a leader like that, the Republicans will lose any and all elections. So if they will have a credible leadership, they have a chance. So why would Democrats provide them with a chance? Let Trump be a leader. Yes, he's great.
There you go. That's the play. Like, let's encourage him. Let's support him. Let's give him some money.
Absolutely, he's great.
Well, on that note, it's an interesting conversation. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Thank you so much. Hoping to bring some good guests next week. You all be safe wherever you are. And whenever I see you, my energy level goes up. I was feeling like I was about to fall asleep. When I do this show, I feel like I'm about to bang the door down. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Get ready to wrap everything up. Great conversation. Sasha, one of the things I was going to add just really quickly, because I was actually thinking about this and we could talk about it for just a few minutes. But, I am of the opinion that we should actually be more encouraged about trying to be part of the greater human race and everything. And sometimes I think that the race divide is played intentionally by some of the power structures as well. So definitely, I think that even falls into what critical race theory is about also, because I do think that sometimes if you look up race, a lot of times, and a good friend of mine in Las Vegas actually oftentimes talks about the fact that she does not really believe in race, because she was taught many years ago that it's a made up term, that a lot of people are not necessarily fallen into one race or another, or they might be blended races and things of that nature. So she actually is a big supporter of humankind, while she also honors her ethnic background. So ethnicity, there can be no doubt about. Now, there are some questions about people's racial attitudes and things of that nature. And even if you look up race in the dictionary and other things, they will oftentimes use words like the fact that it was a made-up term or a term to do dividing of people and things along those lines. So I just wanted your own thoughts, because you're there in Canada, and there is a large, but that's actually more of an ethnic group if you want to talk about people of First Nation and everything. But what is your views of race, and do you think that it is something that we should even be thinking about in the 21st century, or should we be looking at everybody, as Martin Luther King would have said, as the content of their character and not by these racial divides? So I want to know what your views are as we get ready to get on out of here in about 3 minutes.
Okay, as in Canada is concerned, there is not really a racial tension in Canada exists. And I'll tell you why. Because there's no clear superiority of white or black or Chinese people. There is some resentment from time to time because, for example, if you want to get your kid in medical school, it's next to impossible because all Chinese are being accepted because they have brilliant marks, and it's very difficult to overcome them. So what you're going to be now, saying that Chinese are horrible people and we hate Chinese people? No, you have to just become as good as they are, or maybe better if you can. So there is an element of competition, and as I said many times before, all history of humankind, it's a competition. It's how the Homo sapiens defeated all Neanderthal people because they were superior, they were better organized, they had better ways of communications, so they defeated. Are there any Neanderthal people today? Absolutely not. They don't exist any longer. So I'm not so sure that there is great competition between races, because the races are geographically restricted to place where are populating the earth. So, for example, in Europe, it was a white race predominant, although several different nationalities. How many wars were there between French and Germany and Russia? And so there are so many wars. So they were always fighting between each other. But fighting is good, because fighting increases competition. You have to create new arms, and you have to progress economically in order to fight, or so on. So fighting is good. Now, the black people, mostly, they were in Africa. The people in America, the indigenous people, they were there. Again, also, there were many nationalities among them, and South American Aztecs are different from so on. Okay, so there were no really racial competition, and of course Asians in China and elsewhere. But once there were start movements and people, okay, black people were brought into America against their will. Yeah, it was Portuguese traders who were transporting them from Africa to North America. Now, indigenous people, they were fighting white people who came there, so there was a fight and so on, with certain consequences, as we know. Okay, so that started to create a racial tension. So this is basically a new phenomenon. It was not evident in Europe until recently, when now there are so many people, not European extract. I'm talking about people from North Africa, people from Asia, people from in Germany. There are many Turks live. They came as a gastarbeiter, so invited workers. So there's tension there, or so on. So basically, it's a man-inflicted phenomena. If black people would continue to live in Africa as they always were, if white people would restrict themselves to Europe and wouldn't go to North America or elsewhere, and so on and on, there would be no racial tension. So the tension arises when races are together, and that raises a competition. And of course, when you're competing, you want to create the best possible terms and conditions for yourself or your race or so on in order to prevail. So this is a very, very natural continuation of the all functions of reasonable people. You have to accept that. However, I'm not saying that this is how it has to be, but the racial, critical race theory, in my opinion, this is for people. You see, a lot of people, most of the people, they're mediocre people because there are hugely paid top athletes and entertainers, and as I said yesterday, stock traders, believe it or not. So most of the people, they're neither one of these groups. Yet they want to become famous, they want to make some money or so on. So they're looking for an edge. They're looking for something to
they're looking for a way to they're looking for a way to level the playing field. As I said before, they're looking for a way to level the playing field. And I definitely agree that travel is something that I don't care whether even the Neanderthals that you were talking about earlier, I'm sure that at some point they saw an ocean and were like, I wonder what's across the other side of the ocean. And, they might have tried to figure out ways to get there. But, at that time, they probably only had a wood and they hadn't figured out how to, tame the saber-toothed tiger and figure out a way to get over there with them and everything. And yes, I'm being slightly sarcastic by using the saber-toothed tiger as an example and everything, but definitely, they hadn't figured out a way to get across the ocean, but I'm sure they saw the ocean and wanted to know what was across the divide, just like we sometimes want to know what's above us in space and everything. It's just man's natural curiosity. And we know that man is a naturally curious person and everything. And I definitely agree with the whole concept of, exploring and knowing what's on the other side. That's just a natural human tradition and everything. But it sounds to me like what you're saying about society is definitely something that I can relate to, because one of my jobs is being a school tester or a tester in a major education company and all of that. And we live by the bell curve. So what you're saying is that human society is basically just another example of the bell curve. The vast majority are in the middle. There are a few people that are at the elite level and everything, and there's another few people that are at the very poor performing level and all of that, and the vast majority of us wind up somewhere in the middle, being what some people would consider average. So it sounds like you're just saying that society in general is another example of the bell curve.
I think the proponents of critical race theory are doing a great disservice of majority of the people, because the way out of situation is what you said yesterday: education.
Yes.
If people get educated, they can have a good jobs, they can progress in society, they have nice families or so on. If you are not educated, your chances are severely restricted. And it's nothing to do with race. It's really has to do with ability to concentrate, to educate your kids, to hold on to good jobs, to trying to move to a nicer neighborhood or so on. So the races were there 100,000 years ago, and there will be for another 5,000, maybe 10,000 years. What can you do about that? So you want to state, okay, here is a white man, he's a bad man. It's not true. There is a black man and he's a bad man. Not true at all. So the same thing, there are very good people in each race and there are very bad people in each race. But
no doubt.
I think racial theory, in my opinion, this is a waste of everybody's time, because people don't choose when you are born. You don't choose your race.
You don't choose the race, but part of it, and then we got to get ready to get off of this subject and actually get off the air. But the part of the conversation, it actually comes back to the example that you used, and I don't know how y'all handle it in Canada because I don't live there in Canada. But part of the conversation that has existed for decades is if, and I've said this several times on the show before, is if there is an unlevel playing field, how do you find ways to level the playing field? So that's where some of the critical race theory comes in, because they're trying to explain why it needs to be done. Because if you're going to do something, you need to have a back end for the reason that you're doing it. So like I said, whether it's on class side or it's on race side, if there are these divides that exist, and you can find a way to level the playing field so that the person, if two people are equal, and then you have a more level playing field, then yes, you may choose the African American over the European American if they are equal. And I mean totally equal in everything, because you have done something to level the playing field. So you may pick the African American versus the European American because you want to level the playing field. So that's where some of these things come around, whether it's affirmative action, whether it's critical race theory, whether it's a number of other things. And as of society, as of 2021, there are still some divides that exist and all of that. Now, is it changed? Is it much different than it was in the 60s? Yes. But my argument, and I've said this before, is that some of the things that Dr. King was talking about 50 years ago, yes, more than 50 years ago, are still relevant today. And to me, that is a crying shame that some of the things that he was bringing up as disservices, as things that were injustices, are still the same injustices now. So that's where I think that we have failed, even in the educational process. The fact that we still talking, as you just said, about some of these same issues and haven't created programs that have been effective in changing what needs to be changed. So like I said, some of these are programs that might have failed for whatever reasons, but definitely it's a shame that more than 50 years after Dr. King, Martin Luther King, died and everything, after Malcolm X, after a number of other folks that fought this back in the 60s and had great ideas, great theories, and great things that we should have been implementing. For whatever reasons, they weren't implemented, and we're still talking the same issue. So that's my problem with that, is that, we've got to stop the rhetoric, and there's too much rhetoric in life and too much rhetoric in society, and actually have concrete solutions. So that's what I'm looking for, is concrete solutions.
Mark, I'll let you to close the show. The only two things I'll mention, and remind me that tomorrow. This is absolute misconception when people are saying that all people created equal. I'll explain to you why it's 100% wrong. Number two, Steve showed me yesterday the Constitution of the United States, where it says that we are all equal or so on. It's absolutely wrong, just 100% wrong. However, if you want to be realistic person and understand how the world works, please get yourself away from all these theories. It has nothing to do with reality. They're being promoted by highly paid sociologists and so on, and they wanted to find a new angle to steer that, this is not fair, we have to fight, or so on. And it reminds me a story about oath keepers, where they were fighting for freedoms, and I don't know what they were fighting for. But I read an article about this organization. In fact, all they were fighting to be a leader of the group, because the leaders were paid $400 a week. And that was a fight all about. Okay, Mark, so get real, but I'll tell you more about it tomorrow.
We'll talk about that tomorrow and everything, but it was actually wrong when it was created. So I'll just leave you on that note, because at the time that it was created, and they said all men were created equal, actually anybody that was African American, if they study it, was 3/5 of a man and all of that. So definitely it wasn't even said at the time that it was written to be written in that true sense, because like I said, it was written by mostly European Americans. And if you look, there was actually a book written by Floyd McKissick, if I remember correctly, or one of the other great civil rights leaders, that talks about 3/5 of a man, and that's how African Americans were considered. There might have been some other racial groups that might have even been considered less than 3/5 of a man,
Mark,
and even women were created.
It was written by white slave owners.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to get on out of here, and definitely a great conversation, and we'll have more of this conversation tomorrow as well. As always, it's great having this dialogue with Sasha, as well as Steve. And Nick popped in and popped out. I was actually going to ask him about the HIPAA laws, because I'd heard a conversation about that. So hopefully he'll come back tomorrow and I can learn more about that, because I had some friends that were thinking that we could actually ask our doctors about the vaccinations and whether they have been vaccinated, but apparently that's against HIPAA law. But I wanted to get Nick's opinion on that, and I will ask them that tomorrow, since he popped out. But right now, we're getting ready to get out of here ourselves, speaking of popping out. So we'll catch you on tomorrow.